"You've failed again." The words echoed through the glass walls of the dean's office like a slow verdict. She sat perfectly still, hands clasped tight in her lap, knuckles whitening as the man across the desk slid a paper toward her. Bold red letters at the top, "Academic Probation. Your GPA has fallen below the acceptable threshold," he said, his voice even but cold. "I'm afraid without improvement you'll be dismissed next term." Her throat burned. "I don't understand. I study. I hire tutors. Sometimes," he interrupted gently. "You don't need more help. You need the right kind." The words stung worse than the failure. Outside, the corridor stretched endlessly, polished marble floors gleaming under lights her father's company had donated. Every step of her heels clicked like an accusation. Billionaire's daughter. The name that opened every door now felt like a chain she couldn't break. She passed the portrait of her father. Confident, powerful, smiling in a navy suit. A man who built an empire from nothing. And here she was, his only daughter, drowning in the shallow end of success. By the time she reached the library doors, the campus was empty. Midnight air pressed cold against the glass, and through the window she saw him, a janitor, young, black, quietly pushing a cleaning cart between rows of books. But something about him stopped her. He wasn't cleaning. He was reading. He stood beneath the yellow lamp, head bent over a thick book, lips moving slightly as if he were explaining something to himself. It was strange. Everyone else at this school treated knowledge like a transaction. He looked like he was in love with it. Curiosity pulled her closer. The door creaked as she entered. He jumped, almost dropping the book. The library's closed," he said quickly, trying to hide it. She tilted her head. "What are you reading?" He hesitated. "Quantum mechanics. You read that? For fun?" A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Reading keeps me awake, and it keeps me learning." She laughed, the sharp, defensive kind. "You're kidding." "No," he said. "You don't need a degree to be curious." Something in his tone disarmed her. It wasn't arrogance. It was calm certainty, the kind that made her feel small and seen at the same time. "You're the janitor, right?" He nodded. "And you're the girl who owns half this building." She winced. "Not owns. My father." "Same thing," she sighed. "I guess everyone knows I failed again." He set the book down. "Word travels fast, but that's not what defines you." She frowned. "Then what does?" He leaned against the shelf. "What you do next?" Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the heater. He picked the book back up. "Most people think studying means memorizing, but learning, real learning, is about understanding why." She crossed her arms. "Easy for you to say." "Not really," he said softly. "I used to sit where you are now." She blinked. "You went here?" He nodded once. "Before life got in the way." Her voice lowered. "So you're saying you could teach me something I don't already know?" He smiled slightly. "Only if you're ready to listen." For the first time all night she didn't feel like a failure. She felt curious. "Then teach me," she whispered. The clock above them struck midnight, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by books, shadows, and two people from worlds that were never meant to touch, a lesson began that would change both of their lives forever. The next night, she returned to the library, no makeup this time, no designer coat, just a notebook clutched tight in her hands and a nervous heartbeat that echoed louder than her footsteps. He was already there. Same uniform, same calm focus, same cart parked neatly beside a shelf. When he saw her, surprise flickered in his eyes, followed by something softer. "You came back," he said. "I said I would," she replied quietly. He nodded toward the chair across from him. "Then sit. But before we start, one rule. No tutors, no study guides, no shortcuts. You learn or you don't. Deal?" She smiled faintly. "Deal." He glanced at the thick economics textbook she'd brought and shook his head. "Close it. What? Why?" "Because that book is your problem," he said. "It's written for people who already understand. I'm going to teach you like someone who doesn't." Her curiosity sharpened. "Then how do I learn without reading?" "By connecting. Tell me something you actually care about." She hesitated. "Art. I love art," he grinned. "Perfect. Let's start there." He tore a sheet of paper from her notebook and drew two lines that crossed like an X. "You see this? It's not math. It's a story." These lines, they represent people, what they want and what they can provide. Where they meet, that's balance. She leaned closer, studying the sketch. So, the market is a painting of human behavior. He smiled. Exactly. Every price, every trade. It's someone making a choice. For the first time in years, she didn't feel stupid staring at a graph. She saw a story. Why didn't anyone explain it like that before? She asked. Because they were teaching to impress, not to connect, he said simply. They worked through the night. He told stories about people, choices, consequences. She asked questions no one had ever let her ask. When she got something wrong, he didn't scold her. He laughed, not mockingly, but kindly, like failure was part of the process. Hours passed like minutes. At one point, she looked up and said, "You really should be a teacher." He shrugged. Was one, almost. Almost. He grew quiet. I was studying here once. Full scholarship. My mom got sick. Bills piled up. I left to take care of her. Never made it back. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with respect instead of pity. "I'm sorry," she said softly. He shook his head. "Don't be. Life isn't about the path you lose. It's about what you build from what's left." She looked at him then, not at his uniform, not at the mop behind him, but at his eyes. Sharp, patient, alive. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like the billionaire's daughter who couldn't measure up. She felt like a student discovering the world for the first time. When the clock struck 2, he leaned back and said, "That's enough for tonight. Come back tomorrow, if you really want to learn." "I'll be here," she said without hesitation. As she left, she looked over her shoulder. He was back to cleaning, humming quietly, mop in hand. But she knew he wasn't just scrubbing floors. He was rewriting everything she thought she knew about success. The next few nights turned into a quiet ritual. Every evening, after the campus lights dimmed and silence settled over the marble halls, she returned to the library. He was always there first, sleeves rolled up, headphones in, mopping the last corner before switching to teacher mode. He'd pull 2 chairs to the same table and smile when she arrived. "Ready?" She'd nod, and he'd say the same thing every time. No textbooks tonight. Just thinking. Their lessons weren't like anything she'd ever known. He'd start with a question, not an answer. "What do you see when you look at this painting? How would you price it if no one told you what it's worth? Why do you think people buy things they don't need?" At first, she stumbled. Her world had been built on memorizing, not imagining. But night after night, something began to change. She laughed when she got things wrong. She challenged his ideas. And for the first time, learning felt like breathing. Natural, alive, effortless. One night, she said, "You make everything sound simple." "It's not simple," he said, leaning back. "It's human. People complicate things to look smarter. But truth is always simple," she paused. "Is that why you never went back to school?" He smiled faintly. "That, and life got in the way." "You mean money?" "I mean responsibility." He glanced at his watch. "My little sister's in high school. My brother's still figuring life out. Someone has to keep the lights on." She studied him quietly, the gentle patience in his tone, the way he spoke without bitterness. It humbled her. "You could have been a professor," she said. "Maybe," he replied. "But maybe my place was to teach differently, one person at a time." That night she told him about her father, how every success came with a condition, how love felt like a business contract she was always close to breaching. He listened. Not to fix, not to judge, just to understand. When she finished, he said, "You've been told your whole life to win, but no one taught you how to learn." Something in her broke and healed at the same time. The following week, she walked into her economics midterm with calm in her chest. No panic, no fear, just quiet confidence. She remembered his words. "It's not about numbers. It's about people." Every question that once made her freeze now felt like a story waiting to be told. When the grades came back, she stared at the paper, unable to believe it. An A-. Her first. She ran to the library that night, breathless, eyes wide. He was wiping down the glass near the window when she called his name. "I did it," she said, holding up the paper. "An A-." He smiled, the proud, quiet kind that said more than words. "I knew you would," she laughed, almost crying. "No, you don't get it. This This has never happened before. You changed everything. He shook his head. You changed yourself. I just reminded you that you could. For a moment. They stood in silence. A teacher and a student, but also something more fragile forming between them, and when she whispered, "Thank you," her voice trembled with something new, admiration wrapped in affection, and maybe something deeper neither dared to name yet. Rain fell softly that night, tapping against the library windows like a slow heartbeat. She sat waiting at their usual table, tracing circles on her notebook, staring at the empty chair across from her. For the first time since they'd started, he was late. When he finally arrived, water glistened on his jacket, his smile faint but tired. "Sorry," he said. "Double shift. Had to cover for someone," she frowned. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did," he replied. "You're learning faster than you think. Can't slow that down." She smiled at the way he said it, like her progress mattered more to him than sleep. They dove back into lessons, but that night felt different. He spoke slower, softer. The air between them carried something unsaid, something that wasn't just about learning anymore. He explained the concept of opportunity cost, how every decision carried a trade-off. "So," she said playfully, "what's the opportunity cost of spending your night here teaching me?" He looked at her then. A quiet pause before saying, "Peace and sleep." She laughed. "You're terrible at jokes." "Maybe, but you laugh anyway." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, alive. She met his gaze and felt warmth crawl up her neck. She looked away, pretending to take notes. After a while, she asked, "Do you ever wish your life turned out differently?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but then I remember. If things hadn't gone wrong, I wouldn't be here right now." Her heart caught at that. "Here, teaching?" He smiled faintly. "Here, talking to you." The words hung in the air between them. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her without calculation before. Not out of pity, not to impress, not to gain something. Just honesty. Hours passed unnoticed until he said, "You've done enough for tonight." But she didn't move. Instead, she asked quietly, "Can I ask you something personal?" He nodded. "When you look at me, what do you see?" He hesitated, unsure whether to answer. Finally, he said, "Someone who's never been seen for who she really is." Her breath caught. "And who is that?" "A person who wants to prove she's more than her name." It hit her so deeply that her eyes burned. She blinked fast, pretending it was the rain on the glass. He stood, gathering his things. "Get some rest," he said softly. She stopped him before he reached the door. "Why do you help me?" He turned back, his voice steady. "Because someone once believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And now, I'm returning the favor." As the door closed behind him, she sat in silence, her heart too full to name what she was feeling. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just admiration. It was something growing quietly, dangerous, forbidden, and real. The weeks that followed changed everything. Her grades soared. Professors who once sighed at her name now praised her for unexpected insight. Her father's calls grew warmer, his pride cautious but clear. Her friends, though, noticed the difference. The late nights, the new spark in her eyes. "What's gotten into you?" one asked over brunch. "Maybe," she said with a small smile, "I finally found the right teacher." But that teacher was a secret she guarded like a heartbeat. Their midnight sessions continued, though the studying had begun to blur with conversation, laughter, and quiet glances that lingered too long. He'd show her things beyond economics now. Philosophy, history, even poetry. "Everything connects," he'd say, tapping her notebook. "Even numbers have meaning if you listen long enough." She'd watch him talk, his passion lighting the dim library, and think how unfair the world was, that someone so brilliant mopped floors while people like her were handed futures they hadn't earned. One night, unable to stop herself, she said softly, "You should be teaching, not cleaning this place." He smiled, not bitterly, but like someone who had made peace with the unfairness. "Maybe I am teaching, just not the way the world expects." Her chest tightened. "That's not enough. You deserve more." "Deserve doesn't pay rent," he said gently. The simplicity of his truth broke something inside her. That night, they studied less and talked more, about dreams, regrets, what they'd lost, and what they still wanted. She confessed how she'd spent years feeling invisible despite all the attention money could buy. He admitted how often he'd been overlooked despite his mind. At some point, the air shifted. The distance between them felt smaller. When she said goodnight, her voice trembled. "You make me feel seen." He looked at her, his tone quiet but firm. "That's because you finally are." The next day, whispers began. A student saw them in the library after midnight. A professor mentioned her unusual study habits. Nothing scandalous yet, but in a world built on reputation, rumors didn't need proof to sting. Her father's assistant called. "Your father heard something about you spending time with a janitor?" Her chest went cold. "He's my tutor," she lied. Unofficially, the assistant paused. "Just be careful. The optics, that word, optics, clung to her all day like a stain she couldn't scrub off. That night, when she arrived at the library, he was waiting, but not smiling this time. "I heard the rumors," he said quietly. So we need to stop meeting like this. People talk. I don't care what people think," he sighed. "You should, because their words can cost you everything. Grades, reputation, your father's trust." She stepped closer. "What about what we think?" He froze, the space between them charged. "Don't make this harder," he said, voice barely steady. "You're from a world that chews people like me up. Don't sacrifice your peace for something the world won't understand." Her voice broke. "Maybe I don't want to live by the world's rules anymore." He looked at her for a long time, not as a student, not as a billionaire's daughter, but as someone he wanted and couldn't have. Then he whispered, "If this continues, there's no going back." She took a step forward. "Then maybe I don't want to go back." Their eyes locked, both knowing the line they were about to cross. Outside, thunder rolled. Low, warning, inevitable. The night after the storm broke outside, and between them, neither of them could pretend anymore. When she walked into the library, he wasn't there. For the first time since they'd met, the table sat empty. The silence was unbearable. She waited an hour before finally leaving, rain soaking her coat as she stepped out into the night. Then she saw him, standing by the gate, drenched, staring at the sky like he was trying to think his way out of something impossible. "Why didn't you come?" she called. He turned, startled, guilt written all over his face. "Because I shouldn't have. Whatever's happening, it's going too far." She walked up to him. "Too far for who? The school? My father? Or you?" "For everyone," he said. "You don't understand the kind of world you come from. People like your father, your friends. They don't forgive mistakes like this." She took another step forward, defiant. "Then let them choke on their judgment. I'm done living for them." He shook his head. "You say that now, but when they come for me..." She cut him off. "They already have. They've been coming for you your whole life. And I won't stand by and watch them do it again." Lightning flashed, painting their faces in white light. He looked at her then, really looked, like seeing her for the first time. "You'll ruin yourself." "Maybe. But if I have to choose between being perfect and being real, I'll take real." And before either could think, she kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't cautious. It was everything they had buried. Frustration, longing, fear, relief, all colliding in one impossible, necessary moment. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. "This can't happen again," he whispered. It already did. He almost smiled at that, but the fear in his eyes stayed. "You don't know what you're risking." "I know exactly what I'm risking," she said. "And I also know what I'd lose if I walked away." For a moment, they just stood there, the world around them roaring with thunder. Finally, he exhaled, defeated and alive all at once. "Then I guess we stopped pretending." From that night on, everything changed. Their meetings were no longer about study sessions or exam prep. They were about stolen hours, quiet laughter, and touches too fleeting to be safe, but secrets have a way of slipping through cracks. A friend spotted them walking together one night. Another caught them talking too closely near the library steps. Rumors turned into whispers, whispers into stories. Stories that reached her father's office before the truth reached their hearts. And by the time the confrontation came, it wasn't just about love anymore. It was about power, class, race, and whether the world would let a woman born into everything stand beside. A man who had to fight for every Breath. The news didn't explode. It leaked. A single photo. Her, laughing in the university courtyard. Him, standing too close. No caption, no proof, just suggestion. But suggestion was enough. By morning, her phone was flooded. Messages from friends, tabloids, and one from her father's office. Come home, now. She arrived at the Sterling mansion, all glass, steel, and silence, to find him standing by the fireplace, the image printed on glossy paper in his hand. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. Which was worse, is it true? He asked quietly. Her throat tightened. If you're asking whether that's him, yes. I'm not asking who he is, her father said, his voice calm but sharp. I'm asking what this is. She took a breath. It's love. He laughed once, bitter and tired. Love with a janitor? She flinched. Don't call him that. What should I call him then? A dropout? An employee? A man who sees my daughter as his golden ticket? Her chest ached. He doesn't want anything from me. Not money, not power. He didn't even want to help me at first. Her father's voice hardened. That's how manipulation works, Natalie. They make you think it's your idea. She stepped closer, trembling. You don't know him. And you do? He shot back. After what, a few late nights in a library? Do you have any idea how this looks? Yes, she said, her voice cracking. It looks like a rich girl finally seeing someone who isn't rich, and realizing he's better than the people who are. Her father froze. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain outside pounded the windows, echoing the tension in the room. Finally, he said, You will end this. Quietly, respectfully, and immediately. No. He blinked. Excuse me? I said no, she repeated, her voice steadier now. I'm not ending something good just because it doesn't fit your idea of perfection. Her father's control slipped. Do you have any idea what this will do to our name? To you. People will talk. Investors will whisper. The press will, let them, she cut in. They've been whispering about me my whole life. At least this time, it'll be about something real. He stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. Then he sighed, tired, wounded. You're my only child. Everything I've built, I built for you. And now you're throwing it away. For him, she softened. No, Dad, I'm throwing away your version of me. Not mine. Silence. Then his voice, low but final. If you walk out that door to him, you walk out of this family. Her heart pounded, but her decision had already been made. I'll always love you, Dad, she said, but I can't love a life built on fear of judgment. And then she turned and walked out into the rain. Outside, he was waiting, drenched, hands shaking. She looked at him. No words, just raw truth. Are you sure? He asked. She smiled through tears. I've never been more sure of anything. He took her hand, and for the first time, the world didn't matter. Not yet. But it would soon, because love wasn't the end of their fight. It was only the beginning. They didn't plan to become a story. But stories like theirs don't stay hidden. By Monday morning, the photo had gone viral. Billionaire's daughter and university janitor? A forbidden love? Splashed across every gossip site and social feed. Students whispered. Professors stared. And the university board called for a discretionary review. He was suspended. She was summoned to the dean's office. When she walked in, the dean didn't look at her like a student, but like a problem to be solved. This situation, he began carefully, has created an unfortunate distraction. The press is calling. Donors are concerned. It would be best if you distanced yourself. From what? She asked. He hesitated. From him, her heart sank. You mean from the person who taught me how to learn? The reason I'm still enrolled here? Miss Sterling, no, she said, standing. You placed me on probation months ago because I couldn't meet your standards. Now that I exceeded them, you're punishing the person who made it possible. That's hypocrisy, the dean frowned. Be careful how you speak, she smiled faintly. I finally am. When she walked out, she knew what she had to do. That night at the campus auditorium, hundreds of students gathered, drawn by the controversy. Reporters waited outside. And on stage, she stood behind a microphone, her hands trembling but her voice steady. You've all heard the rumors, she began. Yes, I fell for someone, not because of his title, but because he reminded me what intelligence really means. The crowd stirred. She continued, I failed every test this university gave me, until someone who wasn't even allowed to teach here showed me how to think. He wasn't my tutor. He was my mirror, showing me everything I could be if I stopped pretending. Then she looked toward the back of the hall, where he stood, hesitant, unsure. You changed my life. You made me believe I wasn't broken. And if the price for that is scandal, then so be it. The audience was silent. Then applause, slow, uncertain at first. Then thunderous. The next day, everything changed again. Her father called. She braced for anger, but his voice was quiet, weary. I watched your speech, he said. You sounded like your mother. Her throat tightened. Is that good or bad? It's good, he said softly. It's very good, he paused. Tell him. Tell him I'd like to meet. When they met, it wasn't easy. The air was thick with pride and caution, but something in her father's tone had shifted. The businessman replaced by the father who once believed in second chances. He asked questions, listened, and when it was over, he said simply, You've earned my respect, both of you. Months later, the university quietly reinstated him, not as a janitor, but as an instructor in their new Learning Beyond Barriers program. His first class filled in minutes. She sat in the front row, smiling. Years passed. They built a life, not of luxury but of meaning. Together, they founded the Right Path Foundation, dedicated to helping underprivileged students discover their potential. And every year, they returned to that same library table, the one where everything began, to remind themselves how far they'd come. One night, as they walked home, rain began to fall. Gentle this time, almost kind. He laughed, holding out his hand. Déjà vu? She smiled. Only this time I'm not lost. He kissed her forehead. You never were. They looked back at the campus glowing behind them, the place where failure turned to purpose and two worlds that never should have met created something extraordinary. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love can teach more than any classroom ever could, then take a second to share this video. Leave a comment with the lesson you learned today. And remember, sometimes the person society overlooks is the one who helps you finally see yourself. Subscribe for more stories that prove kindness, courage, and love can rewrite any script.